evening and welcome back to the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Srinath and there's a piece of positive news that's coming out on the education front. Girls out of school in rural India has fallen to 4.1% in 2018 versus 10.37% in 2006, and that's the word coming in from the annual status of education report, or the ASER 2018 report that was released today. The survey, probably the best marker of Indian education system, is conducted by NGO Pratham. It covers a large variety of population. There have been certain significant improvements. The crisis in primary and secondary education continues. Reading ability for standard 2 students fell from 38.8 in 2008 to just 28.1 in 2018. In standard 8, more than half of all children are still struggling with division. The difference in education outcome is a stark between the states in the south and those in the north. Less than 50% of schools had provision for drinking water in J&K and Northeast, or girls' toilets as of 2018. So many questions that we will have to answer through the course of this discussion and debate. We're putting the spotlight to where it really matters. India's education system, is there a glimmer of hope? Why does this continue to be so languish? And all of that. Rukmini Banerjee, CEO Pratham Education Foundation, joins us, and so does Ashok Kamath, Chairman Akshara Foundation. Ashish Dhawan, founder and chairman of Central Square Foundation CSF, is going to be joining us shortly as well. Rukmini Banerjee, thank you very much. Let us start with the positive news here. In 2006, the out-of-school girls in the age group of 11 to 14 stood at 10.3%. In 2018, that has fallen to 4.1%. You know, the picture is very similar in the critical age group of 15 to 16 as well. How much of what we are seeing is good news?
I think that the drop in the out-of-school numbers is certainly very good news. Along with that, you'll see that the difference between boys and girls has also really gone down. So I think it would be safe to say that through the efforts of the government, through the efforts of parents, all round, we've managed to really enroll almost all children into school. Having a enrollment rate of 96 or in some cases 97% sustained for almost 10 years is truly a good accomplishment. So on the schooling front, I think we're doing well. The challenge now lies in how do you now get the learning levels to rise so that they can match the years of schooling.
No, absolutely. And I think the learning levels is where the point of problems really exist. And if I may go across to Ashok Kamath before I go across to Ashish Dhawan. And Ashok, if you actually look at the kind of data that's coming up, students of standard 2 levels still need improvement in reading simple text and basic arithmetic. From 22.2% in 2008, the percentage of standard 2 students who can read simple text rose to 27.2, which is good, but 27.2% only can read simple text. I mean, is there where the fault line really lies, the quality of education and the quality of learning?
Yeah, so I think the first step is for us to recognize that we have a huge problem. And the question becomes, how huge is huge? So let me just throw some numbers at this. The number of children we have in the 5 to 14 year age group, according to the census of 2011, is 253 million. And the number of children in the 0 to 4 year group, the same census year, is 110 million. So effectively, if you look at it, every year we are sending in more than 25 million children into first grade in schools, right? Now, if you look at Rukmini or our efforts or Ashish's efforts and many of the others in the non-profit space, and we pool all our heads together, I don't believe we are helping more than 20 or 25, 22 million children. So the problem is growing faster than all of us can, collectively marshal our resources. So first, I think recognizing that we have a big problem and how can we partner up with governments across this country is the important thing.
And Ashish, let me come to you. And I think before I make it more big picture about the states, why is it that the South is performing better than the North and all of that, I think a certain data point is very important to see here. Government schools in 10 states that include Punjab, UP, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Nagaland, Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh recorded a growth of more than 5 percentage points in basic arithmetic levels. But the question is that why is it that people in standard 8 are still finding it tough to do division? The ability for standard 2 students fell from 38.8% in 2008 to do simple subtraction to just 28.1% in 2018. Is this a reflection of just poor education, or is the syllabus and the teaching methodology a problem here? Because this number is now showing a decline of sorts.
Yeah, I think the numbers you're seeing for the later grades, the middle school or in secondary school, in class 8 you mentioned, are really a function of the fact, as you talked about earlier, that only, 20% of children who are in class 3 can do subtraction, and the fact that some 27% of children in class 3 can read simple text, class 2 text. So these are gateway skills, these are foundational numeracy and literacy skills. And if children don't master those, competencies early on, then it's clearly going to cascade into the later years. So I think as a country, we need to realize that foundational numeracy and literacy is our number one problem. There's a crisis, and that's what we need to focus on, over the next several years.
No, yes, we do. But Rukmini Banerjee, do national averages also hide major variance across states? And I think Ashish is right. We need to focus on primary because that is going to build up into secondary and then higher education. And, the data there is very telling. But, deficiencies are particularly marked in Jammu and Kashmir and most of the northeastern states. The Bimaru states are improving, still lagging behind even in terms of basic schooling. I mean, the divergence in education between the south and the north, between J&K and northeast, what would you attribute that to? Is there basic lack of awareness, basic lack of will? I mean, what would your finger point at?
I think it's very important to look at, really, we have a large variation across states. And, rather than club them as, south or north or northeast, it's interesting to pick up a couple of states and look at them more carefully. So let me just take you very briefly. If I look at grade 3, because the ASER tools align very well to what is expected in grade 3. And let me pick a state which is kind of on the top of the heap, Himachal Pradesh, and maybe compare it with a state that is, far lower down like Uttar Pradesh. Now in Himachal in grade 3, you'll notice that a large proportion of kids, about almost close to 50%, are at, almost at grade level. And there is a big chunk, maybe 25%, that's very close behind. So a good almost 70% are either at grade level or close behind. So if a third grade teacher teaches from the third grade textbook, she's not missing out. I mean, she is missing out on 25%, but a bulk of the kids can actually almost stay up with what she expects. Go to a Uttar Pradesh or a Rajasthan, you find that the same number, proportion of children who are maybe at grade level is much lower. In UP, I think even after the growth this year, they are kind of at 12%. And there's a large bulk of kids who are still struggling in standard 3 with knowing numbers or knowing letters. So a standard 3 teacher in Uttar Pradesh has a far more challenging task. She has to teach from her grade level textbook, which is expected of her in our system, but she has 70% kids who are not even at first standard level. Now, we don't guide our teachers as to what they're supposed to do. We have what many economists are calling an over-ambitious curriculum and a teaching style which teaches to the top of the class. So what happens to children early on in their school life who for one reason or another haven't been able to progress at grade level? They get left behind, and like Ashish is saying, you'll see this carried through the school system all the way to later years.
No, I completely agree with all the points that are being made here. But Ashish, I think we also need to concentrate on the quality of teachers and the kind of teaching that's happening. I mean, data seems to suggest here that average teacher attendance has hovered at around 85% for the past several years in both primary and upper primary schools. What can the government do to make teaching perhaps a more alluring profession? I mean, there was a time when teachers were looked at as role models and it was a profession of choice, a profession of dignity, of reverence. Somehow teaching has lost that respect. How do you allure the right people to do the job of teaching? And B, how do you qualitatively make the style of teaching better? Rukmini makes the point that the top 10 percentile of the class gets focused on and the rest get left behind?
Yeah, so I agree with you that we could do a lot to make teaching more aspirational. But we've got to look at fixing this problem in the next 5 to 10 years. And in order to achieve that, what you're talking about is a longer term fix, making teaching aspirational. By the time those new better teachers come in, the flow rate is 3-4% a year, take a long time. I think several countries have shown that despite all the constraints, teaching is not being aspirational. You've got, the kind of teachers we have who may not have all the content knowledge. Despite all of that, you can still achieve major gains. And that's what I would focus on. And as Rukmini said, there are issues in the fact that the curriculum is overambitious. There are issues that our children are not school ready when they come into class 1. So one of the investments we need to make in the next 5 to 7 years is in pre-primary education in schools. We have a junior KG and a senior KG in almost all private schools. We don't even have a senior KG in most government schools. Children at age 5 are coming to class 1, which is not appropriate. So invest in pre-primary is what I would say. Second is recognize the fact that children are not school ready and adjust the curriculum accordingly, so that we can focus on them acquiring these basic skills, lower the ambition of the curriculum, and give the teacher more resources, a teacher guide, more scripted, scaffolded stuff, give the children more worksheets and workbooks, so you create a more structured program. I think all the things that Pratham has been doing for so many years, I think if the system, or Akshara for that matter, I think if those tools were to be adopted at scale, we would start to see results.
Put the spotlight on the plight of government teachers. I'm just going to spend one more question on teachers and then move on. This is a fascinating discussion and I wish policymakers listen to a lot of what all of you are saying here. But Ashok Kamath, the agony of a government teacher, the salary of a newly recruited teacher is 19,300 in primary schools. It's 20,300 in upper primary schools. The school head perhaps earns about 40,000 rupees per month. Some states pay more, some states pay less. A reputed private school obviously pays a lot more than this. How do you overhaul a system that's technically biased against the profession of education? And truth be told, education is the basis of any civil society. We want to be the youngest nation in the world. We want to capture the world. 1 in 4 graduate in the world will perhaps be an Indian going forward. With such a weak base?
Yeah, so I think the comparison is not exactly apple to apple, because if you are taking government schools, you have to look at not at the higher end private schools, but you have to look at what's called the affordable private schools. And if you look at that comparison, government school teachers are paid far better than these affordable private schools. Now, the challenge is that we have not looked at the issue of how can we make our teachers more productive on a sustainable basis. Remedial work has limitations, and Ashish and Rukmini both have articulated this much better, saying that we need to focus on the foundational skills, because if we can handle 1, 2 and 3 very well now, then you will not have this repairing problem when they are in 5th, 6th and 7th. So essentially, if we can improve the productivity of the teachers, and there is a simple way of doing it. I mean, if you talk to teachers, for example, in our case, when we talk to teachers, we ask, what's preventing you from teaching math? And usually it is that we don't have the tools, we don't have the requisite training. If you can just build that up to scale and on a sustainable basis, I think it works, wonders. It will take, it's not an overnight thing. So maybe ASER 2019 will not show you the results, but certainly over the next 3-4 years, you'll start seeing, major leaps.
Okay. Very quickly, I do want to talk to all of you about an important point, and Rukmini Banerjee, if I may start with you. When we look at figures in standard 3 or standard 4, and when we look at, the least subtraction that has not changed much, from 27.6 in 2016, it's gone to 28.1. Government schools, this figure was 20.3 in 2016, it's come down to 20.9 in 2018. Are we also, as assessors and as a society, stressing too much on assessment of arithmetic skills, on assessing arithmetic skills? Because are perhaps these the right metric to be measured as far as quality of education is concerned? I mean, I'm not denying anything that has been said so far, that this is the foundation, but is this the right metric to measure? Is there too much assessment on arithmetic skills and things like that?
So I would say a couple of things. One is that I think education has many more things than what we are trying to measure here. And the ASER report has never said that other things are not important. What we were just trying to look at is at least foundations, where are we on those? Now, if you look even at this year's report, the numerical, do you have number recognition, can you do operations? Those are very standard things that are done in usual exams or even in the ASER test. The ASER test, I have to point out, is a household exercise, and kids are actually asked one-on-one. So if you are not able to read, you're not disadvantaged because somebody is actually talking to you and asking. But that aside, you'll see that this year we've got a small part which looks at kind of everyday calculations. So, can you calculate, for example, and this is being asked to kids who are in the age group of 14 and above. So, imagine you go to a bookshop, you have to buy your school books. There are two shops giving you two different rates, which is the one that you'll take and how much do you think you'll pay there. We have another one which says you're going to buy a t-shirt. Let's say the t-shirt is 200 rupees. There's a 10% discount. Now, by the time you finish your elementary schooling, and perhaps well before that, these kinds of computations, calculations, everyday stuff, you should be able to do easily. So, the point I'm trying to make is whatever be the skill of being able to calculate simple things, I think that our schools need to get children ready. Our schools, our societies, our families, I think education happens across the board. We need to get our kids ready, not just for doing what is in textbooks and rote learning, but be able to apply them to real life. And this application perhaps is also an area in which we are weak. And so, depending on how you measure things, and there may be many different ways of measuring, I think you have to, as a country, if you are going to guarantee education, make sure and have mechanisms in place for ensuring that at least, simple kinds of things that everybody has to deal with in life are in place by the time you finish your elementary stage.
No, fair point indeed, but there are quick 2 points that I'm going to bunch together and ask Ashok, and then a final word with Ashish. And Ashok, if you look at the girls' toilets issue, the fraction of schools with usable girls' toilets is 66.4% in 2018, and that seems to be one big reason why there is still a fallout rate, people who go out of schools. Also, the percentage of schools serving midday meal is 87.1% now versus what was 84.6% in 2010. So it has improved. Why, it is perhaps one of the best schemes. We feed about 10 crore children, bring them to school. Why aren't we able to cover 100%? I mean, what stops us?
Well, so, my own sense on that is that there is not enough data available. So, when you say 66% have usable toilets and the other 34% don't. If there was a mechanism of going back to every district level and saying, these are the schools that don't have it, can you please try to figure it out in your next budget? If that, completion of the loop of using the data to drive decisions and budgets and actions, if we can do that continuously on a regular basis, you will see these numbers improving. 84 to 87% on midday meals is an improvement, but like you said, why can't it be almost universal? Why can't it be 100%? So where are the deficient areas, and how do we let decision makers in those deficient areas know about this, and you can take it forward? So this brings to a point that, are we engaging every stakeholder in the mix? From Gram Panchayat levels all the way up to members of the legislative assemblies and the members of parliament. Are we giving them enough data so that they can drive and ask questions and move things forward?
Right.
These are the kind of things that we need to do.
No, absolutely. Ashish, a quick final word with you. And ASER, for the first time, included physical education outcomes in their survey. And, there's been a lot of emphasis on Khelo India and all of that. There's startling revelation there. The survey tells us that physical education teachers are scarce. Only 5.8% of all primary schools have a physical education teacher. 30.8% of upper primary schools have. I think it's a typo, 3.8% have that. In majority of schools, another teacher was tasked with, physical education along with other activities. It's good that the importance of sports is there, but is the target misplaced? You can't say Khelo India when 5.8% of all primary schools alone have physical education teachers. And should physical education be treated at par with what is reading, learning, writing, basic arithmetic and all of that?
Yeah, I think it's overambitious to expect this to be rolled out universally. I mean, remember the scale of primary schools in India is very, very small. I mean, we're talking about an average unit size of under 100 children in a primary school. In many states, close to 50, 60 children on average in a primary school. So to expect a dedicated teacher for physical education is just not feasible. I think instead of having this Khelo India program, we ought to focus our attention on the foundational numeracy and literacy goals, the ones that ASER is measuring. Because somewhere we need to prioritize. And, if our children, first goal is to get them to read and to do basic arithmetic. And I would say we can put Khelo India aside for now. So even if it's 5%, it doesn't bother me. And the children anyway run around, play all day long. I mean, they love doing that. I would focus on achieving these goals first that Pratham or ASER has highlighted, as opposed to worrying about the 5% going to 25%, which is not realistic. I'd rather invest those additional resources in pre-primary education so that children are well prepared as they come into class 1. And we have a real shot of achieving these goals by class 3.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what gives me hope is that some of the brightest minds, at least the three of you, are sitting together and are willing to discuss a topic as important as this. At the cost of borrowing time from another show, Ashish, if you can answer this very, very briefly, the economic cost of children being let out of this learning curve, the economic cost of just 28% being able to read, the economic cost of, just a fraction of our children being able to do basic arithmetic. You've been an investor. I can't let you go without answering that question.
Yeah, I'm not going to quantify it for you, but all I can say is that, we are, one is we're perpetuating inequity, don't just talk about growth rates and the economic cost, but it's also, the inequity that gets perpetuated in our society. I mean, the whole premise of our democracy and our republic is that we give everybody an equal opportunity, we wipe the tear off every eye. We're not going to do that if children can't learn to read and write and do basic math. I think in terms of the cost, I am convinced. I mean, you hear it later that people talk about, skilling, but skilling is still the repair business. Education is the prepare business. And I'm convinced that if we achieved better goals in education, we probably would get 1 or 2 percentage points of additional growth. But more importantly, we'd be setting ourselves to avoid middle income trap. The real danger India faces in economic terms is if we are stuck with this education crisis, we will be stuck as a middle income nation and we'll never be able to progress beyond that. So we may grow for the next 10 years, but we'll hit a brick wall.
You couldn't have put it any better, Ashish Dhawan, but thank you very, very much, Rukmini Banerjee, Ashok Kamath and Ashish Dhawan, for putting your thoughts together on an issue as important as this. By 2030, India will be one of the youngest nations in the world. 140 million people in their 20s. 1 in every 4 graduate is going to be an Indian. Can we afford to have a primary education system that is going to let us down? That's the big question to ponder over, but thank you very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather. Up next is Top 10 at 10.